included in the committee, how many of the individuals that were part of that committee have students that are playing sports?
There were 4 or 5 that had, and that was one of the, we had that discussion. That discussion was brought up. As the committee chairperson, I received multiple, not a lot, but multiple emails, very passionate about the concept of the sports. We had that conversation. Those parents have made adjustments. And they said at first it was rough, but the kids have made adjustments. And they, the conversation that we had in the committee was, well, at the beginning of the school year, you know, they may have missed some of those early summer practices or some of those types of things. During winter break, maybe it's basketball or wrestling, they still had to practice for whatever tournament they were having or whatever. And so, and then in spring break, baseball, softball, those types of things, track, were still having practices and going through their season. So they have made adjustments. It's not, we did discuss the concern of that. It was definitely brought up, and we talked about it in detail and length about that concern going from there. And each particular parent and staff member had their own spin on why they did it, but it always came back to, we understand that, but we really don't want to go back to the traditional because we've done this for 3 years, we like how it's set up, those types of things, and going back to this, and then do we flip-flop, go back and forth, so just the stability, I think, of it, and they're used to those things.
Well, but isn't part of it based upon fabrication? We were told several years ago when this experiment started that this was the trend other districts were going to. There are no other districts in this general area, specifically that compete with us in athletics for the most part, that are moving to this calendar. There are a handful that have adopted this calendar statewide. Okay. There are concerns that I'm hearing from educators where we had a teacher retention issue. We know that. We've openly discussed that. And one of the things we're having these breaks put in place with the idea of this is a benefit for the teachers. Many of the end of quarter exams, things of that nature, are coming back. Their grades are due when they get back. Those teachers aren't taking a break. They are going to have to work during those break times to make sure that their grades are in on time because they're required to. There are a lot of things that are unintended consequences, just like the staggered start to the school day. That begets transportation issues. That begets inequitable teacher time working on campus. Those are things I don't think that we've addressed. Frankly, I was looking at the calendar. I can tell you I'm not a big fan. I don't see it. I'm not any secret of that.
That's okay.
Can you show me one metric that suggests that this is a better fit than the traditional calendar? From a retention issue of information or scores or anything else?
I would say that at no time did we say that there would be a metric academically tied. Our goal at that point was more so to provide the remediation or services during the break time, but moreover to allow the opportunities for academic support. And that was not mandatory, but that was optional. So we don't have a tie to being able to say that academics soared or academics went up. But I will say unofficially that we had higher numbers in summer school this year when we did not offer academic support days than during times when we did offer academic support days. So again, that's not necessarily a metric tied to the academic test scores that you'll see soon, but that is one metric. We also have polled unofficially teachers and staff, and they have been responsive. Certainly, we are willing to put out another survey if necessary, if that's the direction of the board, to get more information, but we have gotten positive results. Thirdly, you mentioned transportation, the fact that it's staggered. We also went to that staggered time not because of the modified calendar, but it assisted with us being able to cover our routes due to bus driver shortages in certain areas. So that was not tied to the modified calendar directly. It just happened at the same time.
Right.
So that alignment is just coincidental.
And guys, I appreciate that, and I understand that. I don't want to be antagonistic. I'm just looking at it as, I can tell you, I think there was less than transparency around the move to the calendar to begin with. I think that there were things that were said that have not come about that are causing some issues. And certainly, I know it's a hot topic. I know everybody wants to have an opinion about it. I'm just looking at it as a solution in search of a problem. We have not seen any wide-scale benefits from it. And yet I think we've caused unintended, certainly not intended, but some issues relating to specifically around sports, around issues with the requirements that teachers get their grades in, which by definition necessarily requires them to miss out on that break. You're not really getting the reset break that we intended that it be.
I have to allow me to look at the dates when grades are due.
Sure.
Because I don't think that we're asking teachers to work in that manner. So let me just double check that to ensure that the date that the grades are due and the date that Power School rolls over the grades, that's in alignment. But I do know the end of semester, that is definitely beneficial. And again, we can't say that it is the direct result, but we will see positive trend data in our end of course test that we'll see in a little while. And whether that's a direct correlation or indirect, that can be interpreted, but I know that there is data with our end of course test. Now, I would like to talk to, and I have no problem posing this question to our coaches. As a former winter coach, and just speaking on my behalf, we worked over the winter break regardless. As a basketball coach, as a softball coach, we worked over spring break. So I can't necessarily say that there is a positive or negative athletically. In that aspect, we had practices regardless during that time. Our our summer coaches, probably if I were to talk to our football coaches, would be in favor.
Yep.
Because now your players, you're not searching for to be in at a job. They're more, your football coach, they're more available. So again, there's probably trend data and ebbing and flowing on both sides, but certainly we can get some more information to bring back that may be more holistic to the points that you made.
And nothing official, but just talking at the conference this weekend. The high school league is looking at that because there are so many more districts. And I don't know a number of districts, but that's something we can probably look into.
There are probably more districts that are going to modify that are not.
Right, and I know,
Really
one of our neighbors has done that for this year. Williamsburg County has done, and I know several others. But the high school league is also, like I said, it's not official yet, but they're looking into, because so many schools are going to the modified calendar, so how that affects sports and schedules, and obviously your competition, if you're on modified and somebody's not. So that'll be, of course, coming down with all the other things going on with the high school league. So that's, just one more thing. But that's a discussion for a different day. The other thing, just one more thing, and I'm just gonna say this as a high school teacher, and when I was teaching high school, this is a dream calendar. Teaching, we get done that semester, everything's done, great, all our exams are done, the EOC's done, and we come back fresh. I know that with middle and high school, it's a little different, because they've got the kids all year long. But for high school, it is so nice to come back, that first, you come back fresh, you got new kids, they're done with what they had to do. Because over Christmas, much as you might love your English, I want to use English, but I can pick on that. Much as you might have loved your English class, but by Christmas, you're done. You wanna come back and start fresh. So that's just my speaking on behalf of the high school teachers and high school teachers. If I didn't speak right about that, you can let me know.
Well, I wasn't a fan of this calendar when we started. Obviously, I voted against it. I was the only one up here that did at that time. And that was not what I thought it was going to be at all. It was never to be about remediation. I questioned it very strongly and said, if we're gonna have it about remediation, then it needs to say that in the plan. And I was told, no, that really wasn't the goal of the calendar. Now, fast forward. I see with the state requiring attendance like it is, that if we went to the calendar that had no built-in time for students to make up days on these off weeks, we would find that we were gonna have some trouble with attendance. Because when you only have 5 days to miss in a semester and you get sick, there's gotta be some time to make up. I'm a proponent for us looking at ways. I know teachers do not want to be the ones that are on their back of doing the remediation during those off weeks. I'm very honest about that. But I think we are gonna have to come up with some remediation ways, because otherwise we have these huge numbers in the summer. So while that calendar that is on my desk right now isn't the one I would have chosen at the beginning, I see many benefits now. I see that our young people in the summer really don't take that much time off anyway, when we have to do the summer programs and those kind of things that are mandated by the state. I know that sports is gonna have to make some concessions, especially about the football season, because some of the kids get 3 extra weeks of morning and afternoon practices with those football coaches that our kids don't necessarily get. But at the same time, I also know as a parent, a grandparent, that my children played all through every holiday there ever was. And so you gave that up as a parent in order to let the kids participate. My concerns are that we just don't go from one to another and back to another. I can see where teachers would find that very disheartening. I have also talked to lots of teachers because I wasn't a fan, and I became a fan. Because for them, it was a break in time, and they did not feel like they lost that whole time when students came back. They felt like they picked right back up, and the kids did too. I'm a proponent of looking at ways that we can strengthen remediation, as I was in the very first time we looked at this, because I think our children definitely need some opportunities to be able to make up their seat time and make up their skill time.
As a parent who has 2 small children, when we moved here a couple of years ago, we had just started this type of calendar. And I'll be honest with you, it was very hard to adjust to, because we went from Horry County to here, and then we didn't know anywhere to have for after school for our children. You know, I was asking questions, and I'll be honest, that first year was extremely hard, and I'm not gonna lie, I was walking around thinking, what in the world are they thinking? You know, but as we've been here, I will say, I remember I actually already spoke to you about making sure that our parents and our teachers have an opportunity to use South Carolina tax-free weekend. I felt like that was very important. Even this last one, I was walking through Coastal Grand Mall, and I saw sales that were posted just for that weekend. So by this calendar, starting after that, that gives our parents and our teachers an opportunity to save money. And for everyone, including myself, you know, that's important. And that, even just changing that, makes me feel as a parent that my money is valued. And that's very important to me, because my money has to be stretched sometimes. So if it comes down to saving $50 out of $400 I have to pay for my kids' school supplies and their clothes, that's important, because then I can put that towards my cell phone bill. And there's a lot of other parents who may be single parents. You know, that's increasing now, and we have to take into account that some of them have to do what they have to do. And this provides more of an opportunity for our students to get what they need. So I thank you for having that note, and I thank the committee. I think as we have adjusted to this calendar, it is a lot better for the children because they don't get burned out. It took us a while to get used to it, but once we did, and we figured out the child care and we figured everything else out, I know my kids, after a couple of weeks, they're like, oh, when do we get our next break? And then with this, we have several next breaks so they can reset. And that helps them from being burnt out. As far as, my only concern with that is as far as numbers, you know, attendance, different things like that. Until we have other areas go to the modified, will us staying with this actually interfere with parents who are willing to move here? Because it is a huge adjustment. So if we're having to compete in test scores and funding for our teachers, and we have two counties on either side of us that have not started that yet, and they're the biggest ones, will that help us as a county grow as a school district? And second, you know, it's just touching on it as a separate thing, but, you know, we were talking about remediation, and I would just like to touch really quickly that I would think we really should look at different ways to try and increase our attendance in schools. When I went to drop my children off, actually I dropped them off and went back, I saw a line of parents that were late dropping their students off at the school. And I remember I was amazed because I saw at least 9 cars, and this was 10 minutes after school started. And I remember I walked in and I said, is this normal? And they said, yeah, this is normal. And what's sad is that it's the children, it's not the elementary school children's fault. We have to see if we can reach out to try and help our parents understand that that 10 minutes is important. And that every 10 minutes that they miss subtracts away from their being able to get ready for the school day. But that is just my points on that, and thank you again for tax-free weekends. Other than that, I think, you know, the schedule actually looks great.
You're not really gonna be tax-free weekends.
No, they're not now.
They will not be on this calendar because the Friday till Sunday isn't before
So tax-free weekend is the
first full weekend in August.
Yeah, this year it was the first.
Yeah, but it won't be
It won't be.
on either of these two calendars.
Oh, it's not?
And
Just to share, I mean, that's not gonna be on.
But it's
here.
not gonna be on a traditional calendar, either
No.
they're starting 2 weeks later than that. So this at least allows teachers, schools to get out their lists
Mhm.
prior to this.
Right.
So they have them because the teacher's gonna be back and have that organized. Because in a traditional situation, it wasn't until later that tax-free weekend happened, and then you get a generic list rather than the list that you possibly.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you. I read that wrong.
And
Thank you for the correction.
Now,
I
one,
just-
one of the points that Ms. Borden brought up, one of the things that we've seen specifically mentioned to me multiple times over the last week was when we were trying to get the enrollment count for the district. And we did the 10-day count, and then we went back and we're continuing to check on that. Part of the problem we had was we had students that were trying to come into the district, specifically in the Waccamaw cluster. We could not reach anyone to get their records for the purposes of the enrollment because the schools weren't open in other areas. What can we do if this is the way we're going? Because again, I know I keep hearing everybody's going to this calendar, everybody's going to this calendar. I haven't seen it. I've seen Lex 1, I've seen Lex 5, I've seen a couple of districts in the Florence County area. That's it that I've seen. You know, I'm happy to take points to the opposite, but what can we do to address that? Because if we're looking at a 10-day, this is where we start our count for enrollment purposes to prepare for what we got to do. We're under a guideline now where we have to offer contracts out by, I believe, May 1st, or May 30th, yeah. Our budget process isn't usually done until the end of June. We're starting teachers coming back the last week of July. There are consequences, there are unintended consequences to these decisions. And I don't see a plan to address that with just saying, let's stick with the calendar. Those are issues that I think are important that we need to find a way to address one way or the other.
I would like to actually add to that. One thing that was very hard was when we transferred from Horry County to Georgetown County. It was 2 weeks earlier and we planned on moving into our house. We didn't realize that it was this calendar. So I had to call and get permission to basically, because we had the contract ready, I had to drive my children from Myrtle Beach all the way to Andrews Elementary and pick them up every day because we were unprepared for the transit, or for the transfer. But I would like to add that to it, sorry.
Mr. Walker.
All right, everybody's got some really good concerns, and I think we need to look into all of them. We're in our third year of this modified schedule, and I think instead of us turning the trend in the middle, that we go back and look at these concerns that you guys have. But in the meantime, I think we need to stay on track with what we have. That's my concern. Let's just stay on track.
Might be scheduled for the next 2 years.
Excuse me, ma'am, I wasn't done. But I think we should stay on track with where we are and go back and look at the concerns that you guys have.
No, I was just saying these are for the next, the coming years, not this year. So therefore, we do have time to reevaluate some of this before it's submitted. When does it have to be submitted to the state?
By our board policy, we present it during this time so that it can be approved in advance. So this is an informational item tonight.
Okay.
So that we can make the adjustments as necessary or take back any concerns or suggestions that you all may have, so that we can bring it back before you.
Thank you very much for the comments. I'll just add and then we're gonna move on. I've spoken with a lot of educators and they love it. So first thing I want to take in their consideration over our parents, because there is a responsibility as parents that we have to take care of. If we're making that, we need to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's. But from what I'm hearing from the educators, they love it. The majority that I've spoken with in regards to this right here. The remediation part of it, certainly I would love to see improvement on that, because when you talk about interfering with sports versus remediation, guess what? I really don't hear about sports that much when it comes to you getting your education. I think I came on the board with this position and my position still remains the same. There's no chance for me to give sports more consideration or equal consideration as to the academic part of what it is that we're responsible for taxes. So we thank you very much for your presentation. You've heard from the board, and if there's any adjustments that you can make, I'm sure you will, but understanding that there's not a perfect calendar, this one or the traditional one. So thank you very much.